Hi everyone, it's Annabelle and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be repotting this Epicattleya Rene Marques crossed with Cattleya schilleriana. This one has been in semi-hydro for quite some time now. I unboxed this in a haul not long after I started YouTube from Schwerter in Germany, and it wasn't that big when I got it. I'll put a picture up on screen. It's grown quite a bit and it is just full of roots. It's got very tough roots, very tough root system. It's a very resilient orchid, and I'm guessing it gets that from the Epicattleya Rene Marques parent, because Cattleya schilleriana is, I think, a bifoliate species. I'm not sure how easy that one is to grow. What I've done is I have gone to the tap and flushed this through with warm water for quite a long time to kind of loosen up the root ball because the roots are so jammed in this pot. And I'm just going to gently squeeze the pot and gently kind of pull at the plant from the base, being very careful not to actually damage the plant. And I'm just going to tap it gently onto the side as well to try and loosen up some of the leca in here. What we've got is a rigid solid pot, and the media is not flexible because it's a hard media, so as roots grow in it kind of expands. I think we're nearly there. I'm just gonna, there you go, got it out. So this is the root system that we have. The pot is pretty dirty, lots of dead algae in there, but that hasn't caused any problems for the plant at all. Just get you in a little bit closer. So this is the plant, no dead roots at all. As you can see, it's loads and loads of roots holding the media in the place in the shape of the pot. So yeah, really happy with how this is done in semi-hydroponic with leca. For me, Cattleyas are so easy to grow in this system. It might not be everyone's experience, but for me, I would definitely recommend Cattleya hybrids as easy, beginner-friendly orchids. This is the inside of the pot, as you can see, kind of gross, lots of dead algae in there. For me, this doesn't seem to be a heavy feeder, which is quite surprising to me, but I noticed in the pots where you get most algae, you tend to have orchids that aren't growing as much, but this one's growing loads, so I don't know. I take it that this isn't a massively heavy feeder, just from the salt buildup I sometimes get and the algae formation. Obviously algae uses nutrients as well, so if there is excess nutrients, it's not necessarily needing to compete with the plant for nutrients, it's just using up all the excess. Just going to put some wicks into this pot. I'm going to do it in the bottom of the pot actually. This one's going from semi-hydro. The reason for repot is it's drying out super fast, so I'm going to put it into a self-watering system where it's got lots more room for the roots, and then it's got an external water reservoir which can hold a lot more water than a semi-hydroponic reservoir which is already filled with leca, and then you can't fit as much water into the reservoir. So self-watering systems are really helpful in hotter climates as well, and especially over summer in my climate at the moment, things are just drying out so quickly, and the old pot was just drying out so fast. It's a very, very thirsty orchid in my opinion. So Cattleya orchids, if I was repotting this initially from bark into semi-hydro, they can dump off the old root systems very easily, so you just need to be careful about damaging the old root system. If there's any damage at all, they can just kind of kill off the old root system, and that's not uncommon with them, even just for transitioning from organic media to organic media, let alone inorganic transition. If there are dead roots present at the repot stage, I would always just take them off to limit the amount of decaying material in the semi-hydro inorganic pot. But none of the roots died in this transition, so this particular orchid seems very, very hardy and tolerant and beginner friendly. For me, I'm really interested to see what the blooms will look like. From what I've seen online, it seems to take after the Epicattleya Rene Marques mainly. I'd be interested if it shows any of the schilleriana influence. I'm just going to pop some leca into the bottom of the pot, and I'm pulling the wick up a little bit so it sits over the leca. That way we're putting the plant onto a bed of leca, so it's already a good position in the pot, and then we can just fill around with leca. The ideal time to repot for any orchid is when new roots are likely to emerge in the near future to take over if there is any issue with the old root system adapting. With Cattleyas, this can vary depending on species as to whether the new growth produces roots very quickly when it starts or whether it produces them when it's nearly mature. So it's just kind of seeing what your Cattleya does and judging when you think it's likely it's going to make new roots, and repot just before or as it's starting those new roots. What I'm doing is I'm using a mix of leca and lava rock because I've been trialling out lava rock in pots after an inorganic media trial recently where I showed that it actually held more water than leca. So I'm trying it out see what I think. So far I'm really liking it. So I'm going to position it in the pot. This is quite deep in the pot, but I can always pull the orchid up a little bit as I go. And what I find quite useful is to slightly bury the top layer of the plant if you're worried about a dry top layer, because that way the underneath where the roots are emerging will be a more moist environment. This is kind of particularly important, I think, when you're using larger pots. I'm not going to be putting a top layer of pebbles onto this orchid because, quite honestly, it's got such tough roots. I don't think it needs it. I think that it's just kind of a waste of pebbles, and also adding in another media for me to remove when I do the repot and clean. So I'm just going to leave it because it's done really, really well in semi-hydro, no issues. There's nothing really to troubleshoot, so I'm not going to troubleshoot it. The reason for the addition of lava rock is purely that it seemed to hold more moisture than leca, and this is a super thirsty orchid and has been drying out very quickly, so that's my only issue that I kind of want to troubleshoot a bit. So I'm troubleshooting that by self-watering pot rather than semi-hydro, and adding in lava rock, which is supposed to hold a little bit more moisture according to the moisture retention weighing and measuring that I did earlier in the year. So kind of done, and you can see I've buried it a little bit. So I'm now just gonna add in a final bit of media, press it down slightly and make sure that there are no large air gaps in the pot, and also pick it out from around, like in between the pseudobulbs, because I don't want to create an environment where any rot is going to happen. So that's the kind of level that I'm going to leave this repot at. I'm quite happy with that. The orchid itself is positioned nicely in the pot. The new growths are positioned nicely, so it's got plenty of room for movement, even if it sprouts another direction of growth. The new growth is more in the middle of the pot. And that is our orchid all repotted. And I wonder if this new growth will bloom, because the last new growth it made me, as you can see, was very big. Now I'm just going to flush this through now. I've recently installed RO water, which I'll pop a video up on screen to show you. So the RO water, my main issue with it before was I didn't have anywhere to put it, but I recently discovered that you can get tap adapters, like I'm showing here. So I've just plugged the RO system into the tap adapter, so I can still use the kitchen tap as normal. Eventually this will just go under the sink, and I've got a large collection bucket that I can use when I'm prepping my nutrients. And the wastewater is coming out at 432 parts per million. And the actual RO water initially was coming out at around 13 parts per million, which I show here. So that's coming out at 13 parts per million. However, after running this through and filling this 110 litre bucket right the way up, it's coming out at like no reading, so it's removed all of the salts from the water. So I think this is going to be really good for me, because I was really struggling with my zero water filters filtering all the water to keep up with all my orchids. So I think this is going to be very helpful for me, and I hope the orchids, they shouldn't respond any differently to my zero water, because the zero water filters took all of the salts out of the water anyway, but it's just going to make it easier for me to manage them. So I think that's a really positive change. The orchid itself, very resilient, very hardy, very tough. I give this one very bright light. At the moment, obviously, I've switched to a conservatory, so it's getting afternoon sun for a few hours, and it seems to be responding well to that. It's gone quite purple, but no burns at all, and it's growing very fast. So that is my Epicattleya Rene Marques crossed with Cattleya schilleriana, all repotted, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then don't forget to give it a like or subscribe to my channel for more regular orchid updates, and I'll see you guys all later. Bye!